Welcome to the Game or Die podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Moore, and this is episode 59, Running Up That Mud. I want to get right into games by talking about a game that I was super excited about playing. This is a game that actually brought my friends together so that we can actually play this game online, which never really happens. So the game I'm talking about is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. And this is it's a beat 'em up game or a brawler style game that I really like. I'm really fascinated with these types of games. And I know a lot of people have a hard time playing these games. And I don't know really why, because these games are really fun, but people seem to bag on them all the time for whatever reason. I'm not really sure why. So this game is in the art style of the original 1980s classic cartoon. And it has all the Turtles and Shredder and Bebop and Rocksteady, Baxter, all those wonderful characters from that show, and drawn in that style, which is really cool. And you don't just have the four turtles to play with either. You also have April O'Neil to play with, which is kind of weird. She's definitely the least favorite character of mine in that game. Then you also have Splinter, which is really cool. So you have normally 6 playable characters, but there's actually a 7th playable character that you unlock once you beat the game, which is Casey Jones. And man, as much as I love Donatello, as much as I love Michelangelo, Casey Jones is probably my 2nd favorite character or 3rd favorite character, depending on the Turtles. But oh man, I love that character so much. And being able to play as him is super fun. But unfortunately, I do have a lot of, not issues with the game, but maybe something along the lines of kind of discouraged by what the game has to offer. And it's not a whole lot. Unfortunately, the game is very shallow. And that's kind of what I feared going in because of everyone who always talks about how boring brawler games are and how, you play it once and you've kind of seen everything the game has to offer. And that's really the case with Turtles Shredder's Revenge. It is so shallow of an experience and also easy, that you can play through the game with your handful of friends once and see everything that the game has to offer. Especially once you beat the game once, you unlock Casey Jones, and Casey Jones is another character. He does have a special, like a move set that is unique. Same with all the other characters, kind of. But, you have the basic jump and attack and special and all that fun stuff. There is some light extra mechanics going on in the game, like you have a special that you can build up over time and use and pop that special, and it is like a screen clearing effect, which is actually really cool. But at the same time, it's like, when you learn how to exploit that by leveling up your character, when you level up your character, you unlock extra moves and more special meter and stuff like that. You have power banks, basically, special meters, so you can pop 2 or 3 at a time. And the game gets kind of easy for the most part, except for the bosses. The bosses are where the game kind of goes a little bit crazy sometimes. And playing with my friends, that definitely was the case where I was just like, man, this is a tough boss. I'm really glad I have friends to be able to, defeat this boss with, because soloing that game is definitely nowhere near as fun than with playing with friends. So I really like what the game is doing, but man, I really wish that there was more to it. It's a budget title, which is nice, but it's also on Game Pass, so that means really nothing to me at all. If I was going to buy the game for the $25 that is going for, at launch, yes, that's kind of what I expect out of a $25 game. Kinda. with indie games and stuff like that, you're hitting around the $20 mark anyways. So $5 extra for a multiplayer focused indie game that has, a license to it. Licensed games don't come out very often, especially with big IPs like Ninja Turtles. And there is some stuff to it with the game where it basically takes the gameplay into a classic brawler type of, with storyline, but the storyline is so bare bones that it's almost laughable. I thought I was missing something. I was like, you gotta give me more. Like, there's gotta be more than this. And unfortunately with the game, there's not. Everything that you see is all that you see, and there is nothing other than gameplay, really. So let me kind of walk you through my disappointment with this game. And I don't want to bag on it because it is a really interesting and fun game. But I was thinking I was going to play this game for several days. And I played it and beat it and didn't pick it up after the first launch of the game. I didn't even quit out of the game and then come back to it. But before I went, okay, I'm done. I don't need to ever launch this game ever again. Uninstall. Like, there's just nothing to this game. So you start it up and you're like, all right, cool. There's this really fun intro that kind of recreates but does something a little bit new with the cartoon intro of the cartoon. And that's kind of it. You see the intro and you're like, all right, cool. It's the theme song, but it's a cover of the theme song. It's a little bit updated. And then you get the main menu. You go, okay, cool. Let's start a game. And you start a game and you're dropped into the first level. And the first level is the news station, Channel 6 news station, where April works. Shredder is there in a pod that has broken through the ground, and he's laughing and people are running, and you start the game. And this is where you definitely see the similarities of the developer. The developer is Tribute Games, which did Mercenary Kings, and also one of my favorite games of all time. Not my top 10 or top 20, but man, there is a special place in my heart for Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the game. Man, oh my gosh, I love that game. It's a brawler, and I talked about it, I think, last year on the podcast because it got re-released finally on PC and all the modern consoles and all that fun stuff. And so I played through it again and I really enjoyed it, but I did see where a lot of people were griping with the game itself. It was fairly basic on all this, but it was pretty tough. And there was a lot of levels, and those levels were really long too. And you just have this really fun, enjoyable, brawler game. You can level up your character and buy special moves and, accumulate money through defeated enemies and bosses. So there was a lot going on with that game that gave it a little extra, not just an arcade brawler. And that's where this game doesn't do anything really new. You start at the Channel 6 station. You don't know why. You just kind of get dropped in. And you progress through the level, and there is really wonderful detail in this game. All the animation style is beautifully done. It is insane how well these characters look. And then you go through the level and you have to piece the story together yourself. There is no story other than Krang's body, his android body, has been disassembled, I guess, and it is scattered around the world, and the big, characters, of the other not ex-mutants, but the other mutant characters like Bebop and Rocksteady, all the bad guys, are trying to find the pieces of Krang's android body and put them together. Sounds very familiar, right? It is. It's the same exact story from the arcade, Turtles in Time, all this, like all the Turtles games, like the continuity of the Turtles games. There's just no freaking story. There's no real voice there is a little bit of voice acting in the game, but it is so bare minimum that it could just be not there and you wouldn't even notice. You wouldn't care about it because it's just so basic. They got all the original cartoon actors, except for Uncle Phil, because he died, unfortunately, for Shredder. But other than that, like, and it's a good Shredder recreation voice, a little bit more menacing, stuff like that. But other than a couple lines of dialogue, tonight I dine on turtle soup, you know, that's pretty much it. Bummer, dude. Who put out the lights? Stuff like that, like little tiny quips that you expect that are in the game. Like when I walked up to an open manhole, I went, I really hope that I see a bubble text of who put out the lights and maybe a yow, who put out the lights? And when I did that, they did it. So it was really good that they did that, but they didn't take it any further. They recreated the arcade game without expanding on it. They made the game so that you progress through these levels, you beat the boss at the end, and you move on to the next level. There's a very tiny, like 10-second picture, not even a cutscene, a picture that kind of shows the next thing that's going on. Like even Turtles in Time had, them falling through the warp tunnel or the wormhole to the next thing, and they were all spinning around screaming. You got that Mode 7 look to it. Like at least there's that on the older games. This is just a really nice piece of artwork with maybe a little bit of text, but that's pretty much it. And I can't even remember if the text is there or not because it didn't stick in my mind long enough because there's just not enough to that game. So my friends Brady and Jeff were all into wanting to play through this game, and I was too. I said, dude, I will put aside the time. I will set up my setup upstairs so that I can get a microphone. I'll buy it on Xbox. I'll do whatever I have to do to play this game with you guys because that sounds really, really fun. And we never play games online. So when it was coming out, like a couple days before it came out, it was announced that it's going to also be on Game Pass. And it's like, no way, really? All right, cool, awesome. I don't even have to spend money on this. I just need to set it up. So I downloaded the game the day it came out. I got my setup already, and we all decided, hey, 10 o'clock, tonight, we're going to play Turtles, and we're going to play it until we beat it. We thought it was going to be hours and hours and hours long, like well into the morning, evening, probably. And we beat it with time to spare. Like we beat it before midnight, I think, or maybe a little after midnight. I think the game's about 2.5 hours long. And that's just like, for a brawler, that's a pretty good, a pretty good amount of time. But then that's it. You beat the game, and then you can play through the game with other turtle characters or the other playable characters, but you're seeing the exact same thing, the exact same sequence. The enemies don't spawn in different areas. It's all the same enemy spawn types, and it's just like, that's it? That was the experience. Like, it's a movie. Like, you sit down, you start the movie, you watch it all the way through, and you've experienced the movie. You can rewatch it again, but now you know all the twists and turns, the story plots, the dialogue, all the funny scenes, all the dramatic scenes, all the character death scenes. You just know everything about it. And that's what's really fun about games is they create these experiences that are always different or usually always different. And even FMV games have that, like, oh, what if I choose this option versus that option? Do I get a death scene or do I get a different scene or whatever? Like, this and brawler games really don't have that. There are games that have branching paths, which would have been really, really nice. That is something they could have done with this game where there was a branching path design where you could go into the sewers or stay on the city route. And this is where it could have been either a kept side-scrolling 2D art form or go into the 3D kind of, over-the-shoulder style that the other Turtles games were into. But There is a way to make these games amazing. And this game just isn't amazing. It's fun and it's a nostalgia. It plays off of nostalgia more than anything else, is what I think I wrote in the review for it. Because you just don't have that much to grab onto. Now, if you play this and you're going, Ryan, there's also collectibles. Yes, there are collectibles throughout the level. But because the levels are so short, they're about 5 to 10 minutes each. And there is one singular path that you can go on. And especially if you replay them too, like you just see the same things. There's only so many things that you can hit. And you have about half of the screen that is taken up with walkable space. There's a lot of background. There is a lot of, this tilted, it's not isometric, but it is like tilted up and kind of pointing down like a diorama almost. So about half the screen is walkable area that your character can move in. And then everything else is dialogue, animated background type, or not dialogue, animated background type stuff. So you only have a little bit of space to play around in. And you can really tell, hey, there's a trash can that I can hit and hopefully something interesting is there. Oh, there's this cardboard cutout, in front of this video store. I should hit it to see if, it flies toward an enemy and knocks him over. Maybe there's a turkey dinner there that I can use as health, or a pizza. I don't know why I went with the turkey dinner analogy, but there's a pizza or a power-up or one-up or whatever. There's only so many of those in each level. Like, there's like a handful of interactable objects in each level. There's not that many. So if you are progressing through the game and you're walking forward and you're even remotely paying attention, and you go a quarter second out of your way to scroll to the top part of the walkable area or the bottom part of the walkable area and attack, the trash can or cardboard cutout or fire hydrant, that's all there is to it. That's the amount of effort it takes to find these collectible items. Now, the collectible items are interesting because they, give a little bit more like ancillary, outside, hey, that's from the cartoon. Like, you walk up to a door, you hit the door because it's kind of bulging, or I think you see like lines, kind of like movement lines and stuff like that. So, and I can't remember if there's audio or if there's even some like a dialogue text box that says, hey, help, let me out. So you walk up to the door, you attack the door a couple of times and it breaks down, and Irma, April's friend, is, behind the door, and she says, thank you, turtles. And that's it. That's all the interaction you get with Irma until the very end of the level. And it says, once you pop out to the hub world, which is kind of cool. I like the hub level design of Mario 3. I've always loved that. Scott Pilgrim had the same thing. So it's really interesting, but it's just a path, just like Mario 3. Like, it's cool to look at for a couple seconds, or maybe while you're, waiting for your teammates, or, if you're playing online, when your group members has to go to the bathroom, that's a perfect time to kind of screw around in the map area and go through, all the areas. But it's just a path. So you just push back or forward, up or down, and you go through the path that you've already been to. And that's really it. And if you're on the first or second level, you can't really do anything else. So Irma is, on the map now once you've unlocked her or saved her, and then you can go to Irma. But it, again, is just a screen that says, hey, turtles, I can't remember. I think it's her diary. I lost my diary. Can you go find it? And it says like 1 out of 5 diary items found, or whatever. So you go, and as you progress through the game, you hit, trash cans and cardboard cutouts and all that fun stuff, and you find her diaries. So you find a diary in each level for five different diaries out of the levels, and you go back to her, and she gives you some points. And those points can be allocated to upgrade your character. But they can't really be allocated. They're just collected because there is no skill tree. It is just a a row, a leveling system where you get points, and you get points accumulated by doing the collectible items and playing the game, just defeating enemies. So you can solo the game and kill like 150 enemies per level. And once you hit, certain milestones, like 500 points, unlocks you a special move. 600 points will unlock a extra life. 1,000 points will unlock, whatever. And all of those unlocks are basically just extra stuff, extra moves or whatever, but they don't do anything else. And there's no way to choose what you unlock. It's just, you just unlock it as you progress through the game and accumulate points. And once those points are accumulated, there's no way to spend them. They just kind of sit there. And that's kind of, again, what this game is doing, is just making you sit there and go through all this stuff. And it's just kind of a bummer that there's nothing more to it than that. It should have been more. It should have been so much more than just a recreation of the classic arcade games with the cartoon style applied to them. And that's it. Because that's really what it is. There are vehicle levels, but they're the exact same that you expect. Sewer surfing. You fight the xenomorph-looking characters. You fight Baxter Stockman. You fight Bebop. You fight Rocksteady. You fight Shredder. You fight Krang. You fight Metalhead. You fight Slash. You fight Toka. You fight Razor. You fight Super Shredder at the end. Like, it's the same template from the last several Turtles brawler games. And there needed to be more than that. And again, there is no story. You have to kind of put it together yourself. You just get dropped into the level and you go to the right. And when you finish going to the right, there's a boss. And when you defeat the boss, you go to the next level and you rinse and repeat. And there's nothing more than that. And the game is also fairly easy, too. You just play the game. Yes, you can play it on harder difficulty levels, and yes, those harder difficulty levels are harder and more difficult, but there's really no reason to do that, because once you play through the game a few times, once you play through the game one time, if you did not get all the collectibles, you can play through the game and just go to the levels and it will tell you if there's a collectible or not there. And that's it. And then there is also like level objectives, but they're just basic grinding objectives, which I absolutely hate in games. There's a level objective in each level of this game that is, don't get hit. Why is that even an option? Why is that an objective? Because that just pads out the game. Now, if that, hey, don't get hit in every single level of the game, which requires perfection of the game, and you to memorize everything and possibly play with another person who also has to be perfect and memorize everything. If there was some sort of reward for doing that, okay, I can see it. But there isn't. It is just, hey, check this box off. And I hate that type of objective. I hate just checking it off for the sake of checking it off. Status symbol objectives mean nothing to me. Because this world is so big and there are so many people who play games and so many people who devote their entire lives to a specific game at this point that I'm never going to be number one in the world. And I don't care to be, because there are so many different games to be able to play out there that I don't want to devote my time to a very basic game that doesn't reward me for anything. There's no sense of accomplishment other than patting myself on the back and saying, hey, look, I spent 500 hours of my life memorizing this game that takes 2 hours to beat. That means nothing to me. There's no joy in that for me. So it was kind of a bummer to play through that game, which I did have fun with. I don't want to bag on this game and say it's a terrible game. It's a really fun game. It's a really fun experience. but it's a very basic experience. And with the knowing of knowing the fact that it's a licensed game and it's a brawler, I was hoping that it would expand upon the arcade games in some way, shape, or form, and it really didn't. They started to with the leveling up system, unlockable characters, and collectibles, but they didn't follow through with any of those things. The leveling up system just unlocks moves that you should have already had, or should be something more than just special moves, but they don't do that. And then there's a story, but there's not really a story at all. Why is Krang's android body taken apart? No one knows. It's just there. And they also do the thing like they lean too far heavy onto the nostalgia and meme factors of some stuff. And luckily, there's like one or two things that could be considered a meme, and I absolutely freaking hate memes with a burning passion. So, like, a lot of people know Big Apple, 3 a.m. Everyone knows that. So, what do they do in this game? Big Apple, 3 p.m. PM instead of AM. So that's one of the level names is Big Apple 3 p.m. So it's the second level in the game. It's the street level. So you're in the office, which you're in the office of the news building in Turtles arcade game. That's the first level. And then you go out to the street, and Big Apple 3 a.m. is the first level in Turtles in Time. So this is the second level in Shredder's Revenge. But, I don't know, man. I'm just so bummed out that they didn't spend more than 5 seconds on the story. Krang's android body is taken apart. Wasn't that the case in one of the other games? That has to be the case, right? I haven't played those games in a long time. I think I played through Turtles in Time and the Hyperstone Heist, which is basically the same game with a few differences. The Super Nintendo Turtles in Time and on the Super Nintendo Classic, the small little thing in 2017. I played through that on Thanksgiving with my brother-in-laws. And that was super fun, but that was the last time I played that game. So that was 5-7 years? It was about 5 years ago. So it's been a while, and I don't remember every story beat of that game because, it takes 45 minutes to beat. It's not a long game. So this game is longer for the fact that there are more levels, which is really nice, but those are basic levels and takes, like I said, 5 to 10 minutes to beat each level. There's, I think, 19 levels, and you're done. And that's it. You unlock Casey Jones at the very end, which is super cool, but do you really want to just replay the game with a different character that has just different animation to him and a different look to him? Yes, there are some cool, his special, a couple special moves that he has is he takes out a golf club and you have a charge. That's one of the unlockable specials when you level up your characters, you have a charge attack. So if you charge attack with Casey Jones, he pulls out a golf club and then puts on a hat and swings a golf ball at the character. And it's oh, that's really cool. Or he pulls out a bat and points at him like it's going to be a home run. Little animation style stuff like that is so fun. But there's just so much more that could have been done that wasn't done. It's a very basic experience. And it's just man, I really, really, really wish that they would have went further with these ideas. Now, there's the whole big elephant in the room. Well, there was a pandemic, so, development is all over the place, and it must have been really hard to develop this game, isolated away, with everyone, but I have my feelings on that, and that could have been completely avoided 100%. So I don't think that's really it's a talking point, but it's a basic talking point. This game could have been still developed and had things implemented that weren't just the very, very, very shallow gameplay experience that it is. And that's really what it comes down to. It's a shallow basic gameplay experience that you pick up, you finish in one sitting, and then you never pick it up ever again. Unless you want to play it with new people, a group of friends, and you're having a party night or something like that. Hey, let's all play a little bit of Turtles. Okay. But I will never pick up and play that game again. I don't think ever in my entire life. There's just nothing else to do in it. I beat that game, and I'm not going to sit there and devote my life to memorizing the levels so well. And I know I'm being a little bit facetious here when I say devote my life to it. I could probably finish those levels without getting hit in the span of a week if I devoted my free time to it, but I don't want to because there's so many other games to play. I beat it, I've finished it, and there's nothing that I get from doing that very arduous task of being able to say, well, I devoted an entire week of my life to playing this game 24/7, memorizing everything. I checked off the thing. I got an achievement point. Like, yay. Who cares? What does that mean? That means nothing. I'm not going to get anything other than self-satisfaction from it. And you can tell I'm not going to get satisfaction from myself by just doing some arbitrary task that means nothing in game either. The game doesn't even value it. The game says, there's no value to this. You can just go do it and we'll give you a checkbox to mark off. And that's it. Again, I don't want to rag on the game, but I kind of have to, or I feel I have to, because that's it. That's all there is to the game. It could have been so much more, and it's not. So it's a bummer. So I want to talk about the next game that I played through. And again, this is a little bit of a bummer because I had high hopes for this game as well. Last month in June, our Couch Money Discord server, and if you haven't checked that out, please go ahead and do so. That's where I and a bunch of other people who used to watch Giant Bomb, like the old Giant Bomb community, started a Discord server, and it's called Couch Money now. We got away from the whole Giant Bomb aspect of it, but couchmoney.org, there's a Discord link server you can join. It's free, it's fun. We talk about video games, but our game of the month for last month was Dragon Quest Builders 2. And I was really excited about it because, hey, it's Dragon Quest, which I know really nothing about, and it's Minecraft, which I enjoy. I'm not religiously devoted to that game or anything like that, but I do think that there's some really interesting aspects of Minecraft, and I do enjoy playing it every once in a while. So throwing those two properties together and making this Dragon Quest game, this JRPG, but with Minecraft mechanics, sign me up. That sounds great. Minecraft with story? Sure. Man, I couldn't have been more wrong about that game. That game is built for 4-year-olds, or at least that's what it feels like, because there's way too much dialogue in that game. I don't know how many hours I played. I want to say about 15 to 20 hours of that game. And I feel like I actually played that game for about 5. The rest of it is just dialogue. And it is very basic. Again, just basic. Just like, dude, think up something new. And it's very childishly written. It is a very childish type of dialogue. Oh no, you're a bad guy. We should beat you up. Like, I'm a 36-year-old man. Like, I don't need to have dialogue say, oh no, you're a bad man. I need to beat you up. I don't want to play games like that. And it feels like the game was made for children. And maybe it was. The art style certainly suggests so. Toriyama, which is the designer for Dragon Ball, he's got a very unique style. He's got one style, and that's all there is to it. Again, it's just a very here's a game that has, just very similar things that you expect, and it doesn't broaden the scope of anything. The world seems interesting, but there's so much dialogue bogging it down that you don't get to really explore. And when you do, you can't do too much because you're handheld the entire way through the story. Like I said, I played like 15, 20 hours of that game, and I feel like I couldn't even do the things that, like, basic things that I wanted. Or I very well could, but there was no real reason for it. Like, when with Minecraft, you expect creativity, right? Like, that's one of the that's the main thing of Minecraft is build what you want, how you want. And with Dragon Quest Builders 2, you can build stuff that you want, kind of, because you're blocked off with certain things. Like, I got this bucket that would hold water, but it was always dirty water, and I could never empty it out and get it with clean water. I wanted to create like this farm with a river, and I wanted a moat around my village. And so I started building like houses and farmland and sectioning off stuff. But the game would not allow me to do certain things. Like, I wanted to plant crops. So I wanted to have a cornfield, a pumpkin field, a wheat field, a sugarcane field, but I could only put it in certain areas. And I couldn't create more. Like, I wanted a field with just wheat. But I couldn't do that when I had multiple seeds. I could only I wanted to do a wheat field, a wheat square, and then next to it, sectioned off, an entire square for pumpkins, let's say. So I wanted a pumpkin patch and a wheat field. But the game's objective said you need to plant X amount of crops. And there was only one patch to be able to make. And I only had X amount of wheat seeds and pumpkin seeds. So I couldn't span out and separate my two fields. I had to combine them together. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to create a house, like a massive house, and I wanted to create, servants' quarters house and area for the new people that were coming in that said, hey, we just want to work on the field. Like, I wanted to separate all that stuff, but everyone just kind of slept wherever they wanted to, some outside, some inside. It was just like, man, there's no structure to this. And when there is structure, it is basic structure that I don't want. I want my own creativity, and the game would not allow that. I wanted to create a moat, but I created the moat, but I couldn't fill it up. And when I could fill certain things up, it was with dirty water that I didn't want. I wanted like a waterfall. I wanted a cool waterfall, overhanging the background of my village, like just making it look rad. And I couldn't do that. It wouldn't let me. It said, this is the boundaries of your village. You can only do things here. I wanted, my house, and then I wanted the, crop field away from the house, but it had to be right in front of the house. And my water source for watering all the irrigation, like the irrigation system, had to be in the only spot that I could, like the game designed for me. There was all this design, but it wasn't my own design. It was the game's design. And when I kind of veered off and started doing things on my own, it just meant nothing. Like, the game did not want to interact with my building, my designs. It said, we have our own designs. You're going to use this. If you want to go build stuff over there, but nothing's going to interact with it. And it's not going to have any bearing on your game itself because this is our game, not yours. Just weird crap like that. It was really frustrating. And at some point I just said, forget it. I'm just going to go explore. That sounds pretty fun. But the world is pretty small and it's kind of tedious to get around. You don't feel like you walk fast enough or anything like that. And then when you do get to these things, like special areas, you don't have the tools that you can use to open stuff up. Like, I'm going to go into this game. So at the very beginning of the game, you are on a ship. You're a prisoner on a ship out in the ocean, inhabited, and your prisoners or captors, your captors are all these monsters. And you have to do a tutorial to learn how the game is made on this ship. And it takes like 25 minutes. It is just so boring. There's so much wasted tutorial leveling in this. And when you finally do finish the tutorial, you crash land on this island and you are the sole survivor and you go searching around. You find one other person, but they weren't on the ship. And then you find another person. They weren't on the ship. They're all like, everyone has amnesia, I think, or whatever. And you like build this basic like sandcastle home, like just 4 walls. And I was like, well, okay, cool. I'm starting out the game. This game wants me to build this little house, this little wall area, but I want to build a castle. So I started building this castle. And then the game progressed and we had to hike up this mountain to fight this bad guy. And I saw this cave that had something shiny in it. And I went, ooh. But the cave was blocked up, so like I couldn't get inside of it. It just had a window, and I couldn't get through that window. And I went, okay, well, you know what? I don't have the tools right now. The game's just starting out. I'm like an hour into this game, whatever. So I go to the bad guy, and we set sail for a new island, and we never come back to it. I went, wait, what was the point of that like little window with, some buried treasure or something that I couldn't get to? Like if I'm going away onto another island, which I'm assuming the game will allow me to go back at some point. But like I said, I'm 15, 20 hours in. I will not remember that when I am able to open up and go back to the world. And I don't want to traverse that island, that beginning island that has nothing on it except for this one random area that took me 5 minutes to hike up and is in this one little tiny crevice. Like, I'm just not going to do that. So this game just does stuff like that all the time. There's these really little interesting things, but you can barely or not even interact with them at all. And it's just, again, like the Turtles game where it's so basic that it just pissed me off. Where it's like, let me do what I want. Let me do the things that I want to do. And open up this game. Let me play the game. Don't handhold me. And that's where I just dropped the game. I was done at a certain point. I just kept leveling up. I kept growing the tree. The tree was finally done. And every time I would level up, it would just say, all right, you've leveled up. And then I would have to sit through like 7 to 10 minutes of dialogue of the same stuff. And it's all really, really, really goofy in not a fun way. It's a very childish humor. Oh no, a dog that has a butt for a face. Oh no, he's just turned around. Like stupid crap like that. It is like written for, like I said, very young children. And it made me so mad that I was wasting my time playing this game when I had other games to play. So that was our July game of the month. And I did not like it. I did not have fun with it. I was really pissed off with it. But I do want to talk about one more thing before I finish this episode up. I know this is a little bit weird of an episode, but hey, life's kind of weird right now. So July, it's July right now, July 2020. And for, I'm blanking on the name, Couch Money, our Discord server. Again, go to couchmoney.org and join up if on the just click on the Discord link. We also have another podcast. I'm doing a podcast and I'm going to start bringing in guests for that podcast as well. But this is my main personal podcast for funsies. And our Couch Money Discord server game of the month for July is MudRunner. And I got really, really excited. It was going to be, it was a toss-up between MudRunner and Black Flag, Assassin's Creed Black Flag. And I wanted to play both of them, but I've already played and beat Black Flag 100%. So I opted for, and I voted, because it's all voting. So I voted for MudRunner, and so did several other people to where it won. And the reason why is because I always wanted to play MudRunner, and I never did. And then SnowRunner came out in 2020, and I started playing that, and I fell in love with that game. I freaking love that game. So I always wanted to go back to MudRunner, but I didn't own it, and I just haven't had the time or desire to go buy it. Well, luckily, Steam sale was going on, and I was like, well, I don't own this game. How much is it? It was $5 with all the DLC. It was $4 for the base game, $5 for all the DLC. So I opted to buy all the DLC for $5 on the Steam summer sale. And I started it up. And I was like, all right, cool. I'm excited. This is a new game in the Spin Tires MudRunner SnowRunner series. And it's very similar to SnowRunner, obviously. But obviously, it is also a lot less. The mechanics are less refined. It's a less refined version, obviously, because they improved upon and added things to SnowRunner because that's the newest one. MudRunner is a game where you are four-wheeling cars. You're driving cars and trucks. And the whole objective, and this is kind of where I'm kind of bummed out with the game, is that every objective, you have these maps. So you have like 9 maps to play with the DLC, at least 9. I think there's like maybe 10 to 12. But you have all these maps to play. And you have these cars that you can drive around, and you get stuck in the mud and you have to pull yourself out. You have winches to pull yourself out. You can use other cars to tow yourself out, and you just go exploring. And once you kind of explored, you find these lumber mills and logging areas that you have to truck logs back and forth from, the start of the map to the logging station to pick up logs. And then you truck those picked up logs to the lumber mill. And once you do that, you accumulate points. This is the thing with MudRunner, though. That's all there is. There's a single objective in each map. Truck logs. The game should have been called Log Trucker because that's really all that you do. And I was really bummed out once I realized that because I did the first level and it was like, okay, truck these logs to this mill. And I did that and it said, all right, you need 8 points to be able to finish this level. Now, the logs that I trucked over to the mill accumulated because I trucked over medium logs because that's the truck that I had. Accounted for 4 points out of the 8. So I just had to kind of do it again. And I was like, oh, that kind of sucks. I just did this. Now I have to do it again. I'm not a fan of that type of objective. Just do this thing, but do it more. You just did it. It took you 20 minutes to, get the truck over to the milling station. And then it took you another 20 minutes to get it over to the the lumber mill. Now you got to go back. And then you got to come back over to where you just are. Like, it's that whole Seinfeld joke of, if I just stayed put, I would have gotten to exactly where I needed to go. So I played through that first level and I was like, all right, cool. I accumulated the points. I did the trucking for the logs. Let's go to the next map. And I did the next map and I was like, okay, cool. What's really interesting about the game is you have this big map and half of the map is blacked out. And you have to go find you have to explore the level to find these watchtowers all around. And when you get to the watchtower, it unlocks and uncovers part of the map. So it's not blacked out anymore. You can kind of see, where things are and if there's trucks that you can unlock and stuff like that. So that's what I did. And I went to all the watchtowers in the map. I uncovered everything. Then I went back to the garage where I started and I said, okay, cool. Now that I've uncovered the map, what are the objectives? And the objective said, go take a truck to the logging station, pick up a bunch of logs and drive it over to the lumber mill. You need 8 points for lumber mill 1 and 8 points for lumber mill 2. So I just had to do the same thing 4 separate times at least to be able to beat the level. And I was like, man, really? Lumber mills again? And so I backed out and I started looking at all the different level objectives for all the different levels, the 9 to 12 levels. And it's the same singular objective. Get 8 points for this lumber mill. Get 8 points for this lumber mill. Truck lumber to this lumber mill. And I went, Oh, that freaking sucks because SnowRunner is totally not that. SnowRunner has tons of different options. You are still trucking crap across the country or across the map, but you are doing so many different things. There's a bridge that needs to be built, so you need to go get steel from this company in the city, and you need to truck it over to this broken bridge. Oh, there's a down power line, so you need to get this truck and use a crane to open up the path and take off the down power line. Oh, there's boulders, so you need to truck over this bulldozer to the landslide area and move the boulders off. Oh, you need to go find these broken water pipes across the land that are flooding our farms. Like, there's a ton of extra stuff in different objectives. Most of it is still exploring, but that's kind of where like SnowRunner like goes off in this just crazy direction where there's so many different objectives that it's kind of almost hard to manage at some point. And MudRunner, the second in the series of the three, the previous game in the series, has one single objective for everything. And it's just like, man, that sucks. So what I kind of opted to do was to be able to explore. I wanted to uncover every map 100%. So find all the watchtowers, which take a long time to get to because you don't have always the greatest car. What I wanted to do, and one of the reasons why I was super excited about MudRunner is there is so let me backtrack a little bit before I get into it. I personally, in real life, have a Hummer H2, and I love that car. I think it's a really cool car. It just freaking breaks down all the time. It's a money pit. It freaking is just built like garbage. So I love my Hummer, but it is a piece of crap at the same time. When I play video games, I always love when I can drive the car that I physically own in real life. And unfortunately, every car that I've ever owned has never been in a video game. I've always had like minivans or, regular cars or whatever that are just not regular cars that are in video games. But with the Hummer H2, that's usually in modern video games because it's a big, well-known, kind of crazy-looking, expensive car. So it is in a lot of video games. And those games, I always really enjoy driving my own personal car. And plus, the Hummer H2 just looks rad. Like, we can all agree the Hummers are rad cars. They might not be very good gas-efficient cars or anything like that, but they're rad cars. So I own one in real life. I want to play it in a video game. SnowRunner has an H2. So I was always like, how do I get the H2? How do I get the H2? I finally unlocked it, and that's like my go-to car whenever I play that game. Then with MudRunner, I was like, okay, is there a Hummer in it? Is there an H2? Is there an H2? No, there is no H2 in MudRunner. And I was like, that kind of sucks. But there is an H1, which I think the H1s are even cooler. I would love an H1. Man, those things are rad. And so I'm like getting giddy just thinking about an original Hummer. So the Hummer H1 is in MudRunner. So I was like, okay, cool. How do I unlock it? Well, you unlock it by completing 2 levels completely. So that's what I had to do. So I already had the 1 level completed, the first level. And then I had to go to the second level. And that's what I started doing. I was like, I got to truck across these, I got to get 8 points of lumber to 2 lumber mills. So I need, 16 points altogether. So I just streamed online a little bit last night, just unlocking was it last night or 2 nights ago? It's 2 nights ago where I streamed unlocking the H2 and I was super excited about it. I unlocked it, bam, done. And then I was like, okay, what do I do now? And so I opted for going and unlocking all the watchtowers and unlocking all the garage and saying the level's completed. So I just started doing that, and I've done that, and there is one single level that I still need to unlock, and the reason why is because I need to complete 3 levels. So I got to do one more lumber run to be able to say I completed this game. to the best of my ability, because everything, like, again, it's just busy work unlocking, and I hate that type of unlocking. So once I complete the third level, I unlock the last level. And if the last level unlock is complete this thing, then I might just be done with the game after that. After I've explored, unlocked the watchtowers, unlocked the garages, I'm not going to do any lumber mill stuff because that's boring. There are challenges that are kind of a little bit more story-based, I think, and I might do that just depending on how I feel. But that's pretty much it for MudRunner for me. I think it's a really fun game of the month, especially since I don't have any more time to really devote to video games for this month, which is kind of a bummer. Okay, and the last game I want to talk about is Cuphead. Now, Cuphead is one of those games that I can get really frustrated at, but at the same time, I think it's almost a perfect game. Or not even almost. I actually think it's a perfect game. It sets out to do something, and it does whatever it's trying to do so unbelievably well that I don't think they can improve upon it pretty much at all. So in my mind, it's basically like, it doesn't get better than this. When Cuphead first came out, the art style was so unique to video games that there was nothing else like it, and it just looked so freaking cool. And that game came out in 2017, and in the summer during E3 of 2018, they announced, hey, we're making DLC for Cuphead, and everyone rejoiced. Unfortunately, a little bit after the announcement, they also announced that they were making a Cuphead TV show with Netflix. And I remember sitting in my car right in front of the building that I was going to go work at the time, and I was reading the news, and I looked at that news and I went, oh crap. Because I knew that Netflix show was going to take priority. It was going to be the thing that the creators of Cuphead focused on over their own DLC that they already announced. And I knew, oh my gosh, it's either, I basically called it. I said, this DLC is either not going to happen or it's going to take forever to come out. And that's exactly what happened. It was announced in 2018, E3 2018. E3 2022 came out and the DLC was still not out. 4 years later. And so my expectations were a little bit high because this DLC was supposed to come out, within this 6 months, before the next year, usually when they make those types of announcements. Like DLC for a game doesn't usually take years and years and years. It's out later that year or something like that. Maybe if it's a very broad, huge scope, it might come out within the next year or so. So maybe 2018, 2019. By 2019, I was like, man, DLC, Cuphead DLC, that's going to come out. And it just didn't. So I was really, really upset, especially when the Netflix show deal didn't even go through. It got announced. It started, it got announced. The show even came out. It was fully animated. The show story, it was animated, and it got released on Netflix before the DLC that was announced before even came out. Like, that shouldn't be. So it was really a disappointment. But now that the DLC finally did come out a couple weeks ago, I've been playing it, and my attitude has turned around on it a lot in the little time that I've had with it. Now, so basically, this is just an extra island with more bosses. They've added Chalice, the little lady cup that you save in the mausoleums during the main game. She is now a playable character. And you go to this island, she basically shows up and says, hey, eat this cookie. Mugman eats the cookie, and she turns into a real person again. She's like this ghost on this astral plane. She turns into a real person, and then Mugman, who ate the cookie, transferred into the astral plane. So it was like this game of back and forth of either Chalice is a real person or Mugman's a real person. And that's kind of the story. you go to this salt baker that is gonna say, who says, "Hey, I'll make you a real person forever. It's not gonna be temporary, but you got to get me all this ingredients first." So each boss in the island has the ingredients that you need to be able to make Chalice a real person again. So you go and fight all the bosses and all that fun stuff, but the main draw here is the bosses. There is some extra stuff, like there's new weapons, and Chalice is a main playable character, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. But the bosses are where it's at, and I really, really, really love the design and animation of the bosses. That's kind of Cuphead's whole shtick, right? Cuphead is a game about visuals. It's also a game about mechanics as well. A very little story. The story there is bare minimum, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but here it's done in a better way. Yes, it's a smaller scope, kind of. I mean, you're fighting the devil for souls, but they integrate the storyline within the game really, really well. You see King Dice, you talk to people outside of the levels, and they all kind of have things to say. And even if it's just a couple lines of dialogue, it kind of builds the world. And yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles doesn't need the world being built because you already know the cartoons from nostalgia and from, watching it as a kid. But man, here it is just done so stinking well. So I love that they integrate the story into it. Now with the DLC, the story is in cutscenes and it's not really in the world itself because the world itself is really small. And I was initially really excited about this DLC. And when it got launched, I found out, hey, the DLC is only $8. I thought it was going to be like $20. I kind of forgot that Cuphead debuted at like $25. So it was kind of a budget title. But this DLC is $8. And I went, man, $8 and I get new Cuphead DLC because I freaking love Cuphead. I think it's a great game. And I'm not that type of gamer either. I don't like boss rush modes. I don't like that style of just trying to find. I hate bosses in video games to begin with. So Cuphead seems like a game that I would not really enjoy for the most part. And when I started playing it, I kind of had to refamiliarize myself with the game mechanics and the controls and all of that. I went back and I replayed the Cuphead game from the beginning. I started in a new save. I started up as Mugman, and I went through the first few bosses, kind of just going, okay, that's right. That's how this game is played. And then I went back into the DLC on my main game save that had the game completed. And I went, all right, cool. What do I need to do? And so I started the DLC, and I went through the first boss, and the first boss I got to was the spider. It's not a spider only. It's actually a bootlegger gang. They're like 1920s Prohibition era gangsters, which is really, really cool. And each boss has phases. So you have phase 1, which is a spider that, throws a bunch of stuff at you on screen and you're going through. And then the second phase is like, I think it's like a moth or a butterfly that is in a flapper dress and she's dancing around a record player. And it's just like, man, the style, the animation, everything is so beautiful. Like, it is a beautiful looking game, and it is so interesting to just watch. Like, my wife sits down and watches me play that game because it is so just visually appealing. So I sat down and I started going through that boss. I got through the first phase, I got through the second phase, and I got to the third phase. And with Cuphead DLC or Cuphead bosses, you have 3 phases. So I got to this third phase and I was having a really hard time because this DLC cranks up the difficulty like none other. It's unbelievable how difficult this game is. So I basically played through this boss for like an hour, and I was just running my head against all this stuff because this DLC just felt so freaking difficult. It felt like in the time between the DLC announcement and the DLC actually coming out, over the last several years, players have been really optimizing Cuphead and the speedrun community and all that. So people are just like getting perfect scores, no hit runs and all that. And it's like, ugh, I'm not that style player. I already talked about that style of plays does not interest me in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle talk. So I am not that type of person to sit there and play Cuphead for 15 hours memorizing a single boss pattern and getting a no-hit run. That's just not me. But it seems like the DLC was geared towards and created towards those people, which I think it probably wasn't at the time when it was announced. And that's where I started running into a lot of issues. I was so frustrated with this boss for multiple reasons. One of the reasons, I think the difficulty is just cranked way, way too hard. And part of that is because I think there is just one too many projectiles on screen at once trying to kill you. Like, you are having projectiles on screen coming from multiple directions. You're having to be aware of your surroundings so much that it puts you on edge. You play these levels and oh my gosh, it's so stressful that I was like nervous after I was playing. Like I had to calm down. I drink some tea or something just to kind of calm my nerves a little bit, because you just are so hyper aware of having to be hyper aware of everything going on around you. So I got to this anteater third phase, and I finally took him out. And this thing scrolls down on screen, says knockout. And I'm like, yeah. I high-five my wife. I put the controller down. And then that's not the end. There's this secret fourth phase to the boss that that doesn't show up on the fight animation or the death screen, where it kind of tells you how far along you got in the run. And I was so freaking upset. I just like put the controller down, and it took me like an hour to get to that point. So I put the controller down and walked away from the game, came back a little bit later and started fighting the new boss. And that boss took me a little bit of time, but not too much longer. And I was able to defeat him. And then I went to the boss again, and I went back to the spider or the bootlegger gang boss. Couldn't defeat him. So I went down and started doing another boss. And that one was pretty difficult to begin with. My wife sitting there helping me. It's this plain level that you're fighting this cowgirl. She's an actual cow. And you're fighting her. And there's just so much stuff on screen. So I was really upset about it. I was really just like, come on. So I put that down, and it took me a couple days to come back to this game, where I was just like, man, I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to beat this stuff. But I powered through, and I started beating bosses a little bit more frequently. The cowgirl boss I did finally beat. I went into the next boss, which is like this Ice King or Ice Wizard boss in this like frozen mountain. And that one was really easy. That took me maybe like 10 to 15 tries to do, and I finished it. And then I went to the spider boss again, and I just was having such a freaking hard time with it. And the secret fourth phase I finally learned how to do. Knocked that out, super pumped. Went to the next boss, and this next boss, same thing, where I'm so on edge. I'm so, just tense while playing this. And I finally get to where I think I beat it. I beat the third phase, and then there's a secret fourth phase that I'm not aware of. And this fourth phase, this is you're fighting on an airplane. So you're in the sky, you're fighting on an airplane that moves back and forth, and it's kind of like Sonic 2 when you're on the plane with Tails. And it's moving back and forth, and if you jump too far to the right or left, and the plane will not catch you, and you fall and lose a life and all that. So really stressful, just one too many things coming at me, and really pissed off. And then I get to that fourth secret phase, and the screen flips upside down and to the sides, and it is just so chaotic that I was like, oh, come on. Like, just mad that the game would psych me out again like that and just cause me so many issues. I put the game down for a while, and then I came in here and actually recorded a part about Cuphead earlier. And I stopped because I wanted to, like, as I was talking about it, I was like, man, I'm so mad. And I was saying, like, how I did not want to play the game anymore because I was so frustrated with that final boss, or what I thought was the final boss. I knew it wasn't the final boss, but it was the final boss to get all the ingredients to go to the final boss and advance the story. I was so upset and so frustrated. But as I was talking about it, I was like, I can't let this game beat me. I'm good at Cuphead. I know I'm good. I'm having way more hard of a time than I did with the original game, because the original game only took me 9 hours to complete. From day one, when the game came out and I launched it for the first time with never playing it, to the point where I beat the devil, that was about 9 hours of gameplay for the full game. And I spent at least around 6 hours playing the DLC and only getting a handful of 4 bosses in 6 hours. That's how difficult of a time I was having. I was getting really frustrated, and I was like, I can't let this, like, I'm watching people, online say that they beat it, so what am I doing wrong? And one of the things that I forgot was there are new weapons. And I had 3 coins, and to get the new weapon, it was 4 coins. So I went through and I tried to find how to get new or more coins in the game. And there's this other area, this sky castle that you access. And these are like all mini bosses or extra bosses that you don't shoot. You have to parry, and charms don't work either. So I finally defeated these couple of the bosses. A couple of the bosses, so that I can get enough money to buy weapons. And I bought this weapon called Crackshot. And as soon as I equipped that weapon, the DLC became a cakewalk. I was like, oh, okay. Because I was using, and I swapped weapons out a couple times during my playthrough of the DLC, because I was like, just feel like I'm not doing, really well here. It's taking me forever to get through a single first phase of a boss. I was using the spread shot, which is ultra powerful, but a very shallow shooting field. So you have to be really close to the boss. And when you get really close to the boss, you got to be extra careful. So there's a trade-off between the power and the range. And I've been using that throughout the entire boss fight, all the DLC. And it was really hard because I would have to get close, but then I'd have to back away, and I have to be really careful. And it was exhausting playing that game with that ammo type that was already previously equipped. That's how I beat the devil in the main game. So it was just exhausting to be able to play. And when I equipped the new weapon called Crackshot, it basically is a short single bullet, but if it doesn't hit anything within that short range, it hones in. It's a homing missile, basically. It's a homing shot to the boss or anything that's pointed at it, basically. Once I equipped that, oh my gosh, I think I got to the 4th phase of the boss first time. After trying it for multiple times previous days, but then this afternoon I did it. I beat this boss in the 2nd try. And then I went through and I did the final boss, beat him within maybe 4 tries, and then did the secret boss within 2 tries. And it was just like, oh my gosh, if I would have just equipped this stupid weapon, if I had the money and equipped it, I would have beaten this thing within the first day. It's so stinking easy. So I definitely changed my tune on it. And it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I struggled through 4 of these 6 or 7 bosses. So much so that when I did finally equip it and it became actually pretty easy. It's still difficult to not get hit and all that, and to get better rankings on the bosses. But man, it just made it so much easier and so much more manageable that I really, really changed my tune. So I'm actually recording this after I beat the game. When I recorded a part about it before I beat the game earlier today, and I just I wanted to record it because re-record my Cuphead talk because I love that game, and my play style was just, or I wasn't using the proper DLC weapons to play in the weapon or in the main DLC. Yes, you can absolutely use any weapon. The game is balanced enough to be able to do that, but there are definitely weapons that hinder you and weapons that help you. And I used the weapon that helped me, and that made the boss fights really, really, really stinking easy compared to when I was using the harder weapons that made it much, 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 much more difficult. So if you are a person who likes Cuphead but finds it very challenging, man, spend the 4 coins and get the crack shot weapon, and that will make everything much more manageable. You still have to play the game. You still have to beat the bosses. You still have to fire and dodge all the attacks. And like I said, there is still just one too many things on screen to make it so much more stressful than it needs to be. I think the balancing of the simple, regular, and expert difficulties are unbalanced. I don't think they represent what those words mean. Simple is way too simple. Or simple might, I don't know. I think simple can be pretty difficult in some aspects. I think I'd even tried the simple on the spider or the bootlegger gang, and I was having a hard time with that in a couple tries, and then I finished it. But unfortunately, if you play it on simple, you don't get the ingredients. So you have to beat the bosses on regular mode. And regular mode, I think, is just a hair too difficult to be called regular. Like, if they would have just taken away one of the on-screen things that were coming at you, one of the projectiles, it would have been much more manageable, and I would call that normal. And then what normal is right now, I think, is expert. I really do. I think it's expert when you don't have the crack shot equipped. When you have the crack shot equipped, it's really not that bad. But I also am speaking from retrying the bosses and understanding and memorizing those patterns at this point so much that it's like, dude, I got these patterns down. I know what's going on. And if you are not having to pay attention to aiming while moving, while avoiding, it is a lot easier. But I wanted to come back in and re-record it because I feel like my previous recording with Cuphead was way too negative, especially for how wonderful I think the game itself really is. I think it's a perfect marriage of game mechanics and art style and story to blend together to create this, just like I said, I think it's a perfect game. And perfect in my mind is it can't be improved upon. It is not without its flaws in certain aspects. Like I said, I don't like boss rush modes, but that game does it so well that I don't really think that it's a hindrance. I don't want to say I would prefer something else, but I don't also want to say I don't prefer the boss rush mode. I think for what that game is, it's a perfect way of making that game. And man, I love Cuphead. I'm so bummed that the DLC, especially waiting so long, 4+ years, to get this DLC and have it come out and be only $8 is rad. But at the same time, it's like, it's so short in comparison, and it took so freaking long to come out that it's like, it's a little bit disappointing that there's not more. There are 7 main bosses to the game, and then there's also the Sky Castle, which has bosses as well. So it is not without its value. But at the same time, I just wish there was more of that. Like the Sky Castle is all parry bosses, and those are a lot harder to do. But I had so much fun. I definitely had $8 worth of fun with that DLC. And I really, really hope that I believe that there's going to be another Cuphead game because that brand is so popular with a Netflix series and the merchandising and the game and DLC that I just don't see how they wouldn't make a Cuphead 2. But I could see it being something very different, whether it's a 3D style game or if it's a not flash animation style, but something less time intensive, because they are making every single drawing by hand, which does take a long time, especially if you don't have a massive studio like Disney behind it. Those animations do take a long time to do. So I get it. I understand it. But I am almost darn near positive that we're going to have a Cuphead 2 or some sort of Cuphead-like game again at some point. But who knows how long that's going to take. It's July of 2022. I think we're going to have a long wait before we see something coming from that studio again in the future. It's going to be a long wait. But that's going to do it for me. My name is Ryan Moore. This has been the Game or Die podcast. Thank you very much for listening. I can't remember if I said this earlier or not, because like I said, I had to re-record the Cuphead thing. But if I didn't, I want to make a correction from the last episode. In the last episode, I was talking about how someone was listening and they came into the Discord server. They followed the link from the website, gameordie.net, and they went into my personal website, and I kind of shouted them out, and I think I said their name was Jake. I'm totally misremembering that. It was Blair. So I wanted to say apologies to Blair. Thank you very much for listening. And my personal Game or Die Discord server, I just don't do anything with it right now, unfortunately. There is not really anything there. So when I did see a couple people showing up in that Discord server and there's nothing there and then they leave, I did put up a link to the Couch Money Discord server. And again, you can find that link either by going to couchmoney.org and going to the Couch Money website, and then there's a Discord link right there that clicks and takes you to Discord for Couch Money. Or you can go to the Game or Die website and click on my Discord link, and that will take you to the Game or Die Discord, and that will also have a link for Couch Money. That's where I'm talking with a bunch of people. We just talk about video games and Giant Bomb and Nextlander and Fire Escape and Jeff's new thing called the Jeff Gersman Show, I think it's what it's called. Stuff like that, but that's kind of where my gaming talk is headed right now. That's kind of where I am at with that. But I do want to do something with my own personal stuff as well. I just kind of do the Couch Money stuff because I kind of was thrust into it. And then I just became the owner of the Discord server, and I was like, we'll do some stuff with it. But anyways, I just wanted to say thanks for listening. I do appreciate anyone who does listen. If you do, please, comment on in the Discord server, say your name or whatever. And I just want to say thanks for listening, because I really do appreciate anyone who does listen to me ramble about video games, because I like talking about video games, and I just want to talk to other people about video games. So if you want to talk about it, go to the Discord server, whichever one or either one that you want to talk in, that's fine by me. But you can catch all my reviews. I'm writing reviews for MudRunner, Cuphead DLC. I wrote a review for Ninja Turtles. All that's on the website, gameordie.net. Like I said, my name is Ryan Moore. I've been the host, and I will catch you next time.